right, let's bring in our guy, Bret Goode, former Packer, former Arkansas Razorback, now part of the Henderson Phillips Employer Solutions team. Bret, we will talk some Ole Miss coming up in just a sec, but I did want to get your reaction to Hunry Henry signing with Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots.
I think it's a great move. You know, the New England obviously made a ton of moves this offseason that kind of surprised a lot of people. They're trying to, get themselves back in the playoffs. And why wouldn't you want to go play for a coach who's always utilized the tight end? When Rob Gronkowski was there, he had the Bennett, out there. And so it's going to be big for him to go out there and have a chance to maybe make the playoffs and have a chance to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah. And, interesting, we were just talking about the culture change, L.A. to Boston, obviously a long 4,000-mile move. I know you played 10 years in one spot, but I'm sure you were around a lot of teammates that moved around. But that's going to be quite a change just in lifestyle for him and his wife going from L.A. to Boston. So.
It's going to go a lot from sunshine to cold and snow and playing in that stadium. But the truth is, you think of teams in the West Coast, they've always kind of had a hard time of traveling to other places to play because of time change. And so now he's on the East Coast, and so you won't have to have that big, long difference, when you have to go play a noon or 1 o'clock game. And so it's going to be a little bit different, but he'll adapt well. They've got a turf field, and he's a big guy with some big hands, so he'll still be able to catch the football.
All right, last NFL question. We'll talk Ole Miss and a little bit on the Razorbacks. Andy Dalton, Cowboys to Bears. Bears fans are not happy about this at all. Any thoughts on that? A team you're very familiar with in the Chicago Bears.
I think as a former Packer, you got to love it for the Bears. You've seen all their reactions. They hated it. They thought they were going to get Russell Wilson. They tried to throw the kitchen sink at Seattle, and there was no budging there. And I think, them signing him to a one-year deal, $10 million with $3 million incentives, yeah, he might be able to make it. No talent in Chicago. That's the problem. Chicago's got an unbelievable defense, but it's the same thing for Mitchell Trubisky. He hadn't had anybody to throw it to, and they don't have a running game. So until they get those problems fixed, it doesn't really matter who you have at quarterback.
Bret, you mentioned the unbelievable defense for the Chicago Bears. It's kind of the opposite in Ole Miss. Good offense, no defense down there in Oxford, Mississippi, and it always starts with the quarterback. And I know that Matt Corral put up staggering numbers this past season, video game-like numbers, but wasn't able to do it against Arkansas. 6 interceptions, turnover on downs. I mean, they just looked awful in that game. Is it clearly still his job next year, or could you see John Rice Plumlee getting some elaborated playing time in 2021?
I think it's his job, and I think it's his job to lose. And the interesting thing about Plumlee is he's spending a lot of time with baseball right now. So he's not even over at the Manning Center doing much with football, and so you don't really know what they're going to do with him. There's a lot of people that maybe talk about him being a good athlete moving to a slot receiver because they've got a 4-star true freshman coming in, Luke Altmaier, and they think that he's going to push that backup role along with Keith Dent. And, it's going to be kind of anybody's game. I think if he goes out and throws 6 interceptions consistently, yeah, he's going to be out. But if he can go out there and just kind of stay focused and just kind of sling the ball like he did last year when he had the confidence, I think he'll be okay.
When you went to Oxford as a former Razorback, I know the Grove's cool, but Vaught Hemingway doesn't come across as intimidating and doesn't come across as intense. Would you say that was one of the lesser on-field and atmosphere experiences that you had in the Southeastern Conference?
It was interesting. You pull up and all the kids are dressed up. Everybody's in suits and dresses, and so you kind of get caught behind, and then you pull in, and I was part of that game, with Eli Manning, and it's like, wow, this stadium can get rocking. And so, we went 6 overtimes there, which was a phenomenal game, and it was a fun game to be at. And then you go back again when they don't have him, and it's not a big crowd. They're not really as into it. So I think it all depends on, every team in the SEC. If you're winning, the crowd's going to be bigger and better, and if you're not so much, that they tend to want to start getting on that sauce a little quicker and go to the party.
Get back in that groove. And let's talk about where you win games in the SEC. That's up front, offensive and defensive lines. They've got a right tackle. They got to replace Royce Newman. How's the offensive line look for Ole Miss heading into spring, and how many players do they need to identify for the fall?
The greatest thing about them is they led the SEC in rushing last year, and a lot of people probably don't know that, at 210 yards a game, and they were returning every single person on their offensive line except Newman. Well, they've got James, who was right guard last year. He was a freshman, and he earned All-America honors, and there's talks of moving him over since they've got depth on the interior, and he's played a full year, and he kind of knows the line, knows what's going on. But then they've also got a redshirt freshman, Cedric Melton, and a redshirt freshman, Eli Aker. And they've got big shoes to fill. So that's going to be a big competition going into this spring and fall camp of who can solidify that right tackle spot to allow them to continue to run the football. Because, if you led the SEC in rushing last year with an experienced offensive line and you're returning 4 of those, you expect to do the same thing this year.
What's your thoughts on their head coach, Lane Kiffin? He's never one to be quiet on Twitter. He's always willing to call out the biggest and the best in the league, and like Nick Saban, always seems to play that team hard. He can motivate his kids. He's evolved and matured from his time at Tennessee, but what are your thoughts on how he'll do over the long haul in Oxford?
He's got to win football games to continue to stay there. But, you're right on the trolling of Twitter. The other day he posted a deal of making a new license plate for himself, and he sent it to Nick Saban. It was just a picture that he saw as an Alabama tag, and, it was kind of a funny joke. But he's very good. Kids love him. But at the end of the day, he's going to have to win a lot more than 5 football games if he's wanting to stay in the SEC for a long time.
Brett Goode with us right now, Henderson Phillips, Employer Solutions. Brett, this game this year in Oxford, Ole Miss felt embarrassed. They're ticked. That's going to be a game they circle on their calendar. And Tommy and Clay always like to reference how important it is for Arkansas to beat the Mississippi schools. We're so long out for that, but how anticipated of a game do you think Arkansas is going to be from the perspective of the Ole Miss coaching staff and players based on what occurred this past season?
Probably a lot. Even what we just talked about with him on Twitter, he congratulated us last year. We were doing a lot of memes of the lane train. And so there's all those things that are going on in his mind. And so he's probably going to have an aggressive game plan. He's going to go out there and try to pick us apart. They tried last year. They didn't work. So they're going to try it again. That's his offense. They're just going to let it go.
Hey, I want to ask you about Arkansas before we go, and that's great stuff on Ole Miss, but Hogs are going to open up their scrimmage on Saturday, let the public in, let maybe potential recruits that they can't have a visit with them right now because of the dead period, but they would be welcome in as well. So media will be there. What should we be looking for anyone that wants to wander over Saturday morning? Gates open at 10:30. A lot of people are focused on the quarterback stuff, and rightfully so, but Brett, this is an interesting scrimmage. The fact that Sam Pittman so early on in spring practice is letting everybody in to watch.
It is, and I know we've talked kind of about their depth and getting depth at positions, but I might try to go there with my family and just look at them. And I want to see some energy. I want to see the energy on the field because this is a time of year where it's hard to practice. It's really hard. There's no games coming up. You've got school starting to come to an end. Everything's kind of where it is. So you got to see the energy on the field. And for the most part, we saw that last season. And so if we can continue to see that energy going, those guys creating, that own atmosphere that they need to create, I think they're going to improve and they'll build off each other and be a better football team.
Specifically the defensive line. That's an area I think that will be interesting to see if they can replace guys like Jonathan Marshall up front. What should we be looking for when your trained eye goes out there and sees those battles, and it won't always be one-on-one? What are you specifically looking for maybe on that defensive line?
Well, you love the one-on-one battles, first of all, because you get good on good, and those guys are going, and it's a quick battle. It's intense, and then when you get down there, you want to know the guys are doing what the defense is being called. The plays on the defense. They're understanding and the knowledge of why each guy's got to hit a certain gap. And so that's what you're going to look for is making sure those guys are hitting those gaps, making sure that the defensive line is keeping the offensive line off the linebackers and not allowing them to go up to linebackers for safety in the run game. And so those are the key points that you want to watch and make sure those guys are improving week to week. Yeah, they're going to make mistakes, but you want to see them come back the next time and correct that.
All right, Bret Goode, former Razorback, Super Bowl champion with the Green Bay Packers, played 10 years in the NFL. He's with us every Wednesday here on the Morning Rush. You're part of the team at Henderson Phillips Employer Solutions. I know we got somebody listening this morning that owns a small business, owns a larger scale business, or maybe they're the HR manager where they work. If they're in charge of employee benefits, health insurance, staffing management solutions, you'd love to sit down and talk with them about the things you can offer for them.
I would. I wasn't that Andy Dalton that got the $10 million contract for a year. I'm out on the road. I'm grinding. So I would love to have a conversation. We can talk about the tax help. We can do individual help. We can set you up for life insurance to protect your family. Nobody likes talking about it, but it's just one of those things that kind of eases your mind and move forward. So I'd love to take a phone call from you.
So, you mentioned that even personal insurance like life insurance, you handle vehicle insurance and homeowners as well.
That's right. We can handle anything that comes across, and if we can't, we've got a guy that can handle it for you.
All right, 479-651-2292. You can text or call that number. That's 651-2292 for Bret Goode with Henderson Phillips Employer Solutions. Who do you have in your Final Four? Have you done your bracket yet?
I have not fully completed it yet. I do have Arkansas making the Elite Eight, and I'm when you get down to that point, anything can happen. And so I'm kind of caught right now, and I've always waited till the last minute, so hopefully I can get close. But I will post a picture on Twitter once I get it done.
You need to get in our bracket deal. If you have a perfect bracket, we'll get you that $1 million.
I'm going to.
Yeah,
so. I'm going to. Everybody wants to win $1 million. I'm trying.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, good luck. We'll talk next Wednesday. We'll find out how that bracket's doing next Wednesday.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
All right.